Good morning, class. For the past couple of days, we have been learning how to add fractions. The fractions we have worked with before have all had common denominators. Today, you will be successful if you're able to add fractions with uncommon denominators. Take a moment to close your eyes and imagine this situation with me. You and your friend have decided to make the most delicious cupcakes. Your mom is going to take you shopping, and she tells you that you can only take one grocery list. She doesn't want anything on there twice because she says it will confuse her. Now, this is going to be easy because you and your friend have decided to make cupcakes that include all of the same ingredients. But you didn't realize until you had to make the grocery list that they include different amounts of each ingredient. So how are you going to add them together on the list? None of them have common denominators. Take a moment to pause the video at this time and write down some ideas on how you would add these fractions with uncommon denominators. Welcome back. Thankfully, by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to successfully write your grocery list for your mom. Let's start with one example so we know we are writing the grocery list the correct way. First, let's practice with these two fractions, 1/4 and 3/6. Now, if we took the time to draw circles and divide them into equal parts, they would look like this. You can see that this circle has 4 parts and one section is shaded in, and this circle has 6 parts and 3 of those parts are shaded in. Now, this should look familiar to you since we worked with this when we've discussed fractions before. Now, drawing circles and shading them in may produce your answer with uncommon denominators. However, it's not recommended because it takes a lot of time and it doesn't always give you the correct answer. So let's take a moment and figure out how to solve this problem without shading in circles. The first thing we must do is make the fractions have the same denominator. We can see that this one has a denominator of 4 and this one has a denominator of 6. So we must both get them to have a denominator that is the same. When we add fractions, they must always have the same denominator. To do this, we have to find the least common denominator. Sometimes you will hear people refer to this as the LCD. So on your notebook paper, go ahead and write this with me. We have to find the multiples of 4, and we have to find the multiples of 6. Now, the multiples are the numbers that you get when you multiply this number, either 4 or 6, by another number. So if we multiply 4 by 1, we get 4. If we multiply 4 by 2, we get 8. And then if we keep going, we could have 12, 16, 20, and 24. Now let's go down and do the same thing for 6. If we multiply 6 by 1, we would get 6. If we multiplied 6 by 2, we would get 12. If we multiplied 6 by 3, we would get 18. And then 6 by 4, we would have 24. Now, when we look at the list, we can see that there are numbers in common, which is what we want. We have 24 in common and 12 in common. It is important when you're finding the least common denominator to find the smallest number. So always go with the first number they have in common. So it would not be 24, it would be 12. And when you find it, go ahead and circle it in both lists in case you need to come back to it. So we know that the least common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12. So now we must figure out how to make these fractions have a denominator of 12 so they are the same. The most important thing to remember is when you're working with fractions, whatever you do to the bottom or the denominator, you must also do the top or the numerator. So we know we have to multiply 4 by 3 to get 12. So what do you think we have to do to the 1? We have to multiply 1 by 3 to make the fraction work. So this would become 3/12, as you see here. Now we're also going to do the same thing over here to 3/6. We multiply 6 by 2 to get 12. So then we have to multiply 3 by 2 to get 12. Let's take a moment and look at how our circles changed in this problem. Originally, you can see that they had 4 sections with 1 shaded. But if you make them equivalent, the same amount of the circle is still shaded. The circles now have the same amount of pieces. They both have 12, instead of this one having 4 and this one having only 6. Since our fractions now have the same common denominators, it's like the problems we have worked with before. You just go right through and add the numerators, but make sure you leave the denominators the same. Do not add your denominators. So we know that 6 plus 3 is 9. And as we mentioned before, you leave that denominator the same, so you should have 9/12. Now, when you're looking at this fraction, is there anything you see in the numerator and the denominator that they are both divisible by? Hopefully you notice that the numerator and the denominator were divisible by 3. So if you divide 9 by 3, you get 3. And if you divide 12 by 3, you get 4. Now, by dividing the numerator and the denominator by 3, you're putting your answer in simplest form. But for your answer to be correct, it does not have to be reduced to its lowest terms. Either answer is acceptable. Now, let's work through a couple together. I will help you, but I want you to do the majority of the solving on your own. So we notice immediately when we look at these two fractions, they do not have the same denominator. So what should you do first? That's right, you should find the common denominator. Take a moment to pause the video and list out all the multiples of 10 and 5. Circle the lowest common denominator, and then start the video again. Did you get 10 as your LCD? Now take the proper steps to change the numerator so both fractions have common denominators. Remember, whatever you do on the bottom, you must also do at the top. Welcome back. Did you get 6/10 and 2/10? In this problem, you don't have to change anything to the first fraction since 10 is our least common denominator. But you know that you have to multiply 5 by 2 to get 10, so you must multiply 1 by 2 to get 2/10. It is okay if you used 5 for your LCD. You may have been confused. Remember, a multiple is a number that both numbers can be multiplied to get. We are not dividing. If you didn't get these two fractions, check your work and compare it to what's shown on the screen. You may pause the video to do this now. If you do not need to do this, let's take the final step to solve your problem. Now that we have common denominators, what should you do? Pause the video to complete the final step. Welcome back. I hope you added the numerators to get 8/10. And if you took the additional step to reduce, your answer should be 4/5 because 8 and 10 are both divisible by 2. Pause the video at this time to compare your work to what is shown on the screen. Now let's work with 2/5 and 1/3. What steps do we have to take to get the fractions to have the same common denominators? There should be multiple steps you are completing at this time. Pause the video and complete all of the steps to make the complete fractions that have the same common denominator. Welcome back. Did you get 6/15 and 5/15? You should have found the LCD of 15, and then you should have multiplied the denominator and the numerators by the same number to produce these fractions. Now go ahead and pause the video and add the fractions. You should be experts at this by now because they have common denominators. Welcome back. Did you get 11 over 30 as your answer? No? Well, good job. This is the incorrect answer. This is what happens if we were to add 6 and 5 and 15 and 15. Remember, we never add the denominators. They stay the same. We only add the numerators. So your correct answer should have been 11/15. And 11 and 15 are not divisible by any common numbers. So this is our final answer. Before I send you on your own, let's do one last problem together. This time, let's work with 2/4 and 3/6. What steps should be taken to make the fractions have common denominators? Go ahead and pause the video to do this on your notebook paper, but remember to show all of your work. Is the correct least common denominator 2? No, the correct LCD cannot be 2. Both numbers are divisible by 2, but they are not multiples of 2. This time you had to write out several numbers of 4 and 6 until you could find the least common denominator. Hopefully you got 12. 6 times 2 is 12, and 4 times 3 is 12. Then, I hope you took the time to multiply the numerators by that same number to produce equivalent fractions. Did you notice this time that we did not only make equivalent fractions between our first and second fraction, but both fractions are equivalent to each other? With what you've learned from today's lesson, can you make any predictions about what our answer might be without solving the problem? Pause the video and write down some of your predictions. Now, once again, pause the video and go ahead and solve the problem to see if your predictions are right. Wow! When we solve this problem, the numerator and the denominator match. 6 plus 6 gives us 12, and our denominator is also 12. Now, this problem gets a little tricky when we reduce it to lowest terms. What is a number that both 12 and 12 is divisible by? Well, you guessed it, 12 and 12 are both divisible by 12. So we get 1 over 1, which is equivalent to 1. Whenever your numerator and your denominator are the exact same number, your answer will always be 1. We can also see if we move the circles over top of each other, the whole circle is now shaded because 6/12 of the circle is shaded from this fraction, and another 6/12 of the circle is shaded from this fraction. Now, using what we have learned from today, you're going to pick up a cooking fractions paper that looks like this. You can see that your recipes are right here, and there is space down here for you to make the new grocery list for your mom. Pick this up from the math bin and help make the shopping trip a lot easier for your friend's mom. If there is still time left after you complete this worksheet, visit the challenge box to pick up a challenge worksheet for extra credit. This concludes the end of our lesson. Please use all of your notes to solve this worksheet to the best of your ability. Thanks for listening.